Alright guys, moving on to the next step. Let's hope these birds calm down because I for some reason I get a lot of background noise with, and it doesn't really matter what microphone I use. I've tried multiples and I'm still getting a lot of background noise, especially when they flap around. So I'm gonna try to eliminate that as best as possible. Moving on to the next step, and honestly guys, I'm about a week or two behind what I normally, or the schedule I normally follow, due to an auction that we have coming up, an actual Lofty Foundation auction that I'm hoping to get some birds from there. And if I do, I want to incorporate them in my breeding cycle for this upcoming year. So I'm actually a week behind, but nonetheless, the steps are going to be the same regardless. If you guys are like myself, you should be finishing up your medication, if not all done, and the birds should be on the lights. I'm sort of double dipping. So I'm on my second week of medication. What I'm actually giving right now is something straight for canker. The 4-in-1 I gave him last week did have something for canker, but it said it was oral canker, and I wanted to use something specifically to make sure that they're free of canker. And then I'll maintain that with apple cider vinegar throughout the year. But the idea is to obviously get them free of that canker. With that being said, also pay attention to your birds, guys. If you still have birds that are molting, say like this cockbird down here that's in the trough, don't start to reduce them yet. I know a lot of guys, including myself, I'll reduce the birds, especially the hens. I don't like fat hens. And unfortunately, if they're still molting, you got to get them through that molt as best as possible. So still feed them that high protein mix to get them through that molt. Once they're done molting, then you can reduce them. And I usually start to reduce them just the week before I start putting them together. So the week before I made them up, I'll start to put them on probably half barley, just to see how they do. That's, of course, assuming that the birds feel heavy to begin with. But most of the birds at this point feel okay. If you do end up having fat hens, guys, I highly recommend you start to reduce them a little bit in weight. And I don't mean to feed them less. We are in the winter months, it's cold. They use a lot of this food, the processing of their food to keep warm, and I don't recommend you guys reducing the amount of feed. But feed them a half portion, and then the other half mix in some light grain like barley. So if, for instance, if I feed 8 cups of food, I'm now gonna give 4 cups of feed, 4 cups of barley, and reduce it that way. So they still can fill themselves up and have a full crop of feed, but they're not loading themselves up with tons of peas and corn and everything else. They're actually gonna fill that gap with the barley. And it's helped me in the past. The birds have not gotten too big. With the exception of a few. Some birds just immediately go for the good stuff and they still end up gaining the weight. And in that case, I mean, you can judge from there. But for the most part, you should be okay. Honestly, the next step before I put the birds together, my very next step, and it's not necessarily a must. You guys can choose to do however you like. But what I like to do personally is I like to take out any available perch space that I may have in the cox section. So for instance, and excuse the mess, like I said before, I don't clean. I'm not going to clean until the medication process is over. So right now I know it's a little bit vulgar to say the least, but hang in there with me. It will be clean before I put them together. So basically these boxes here, or these box style perches, I'm going to remove. I'm going to keep exactly 16 cocks in here, and I'm going to sort of force them to take a box. With the exception of that window seal, which I may block off so they can't land on that, they're gonna have to basically pick a box. In my experience, there's always 1 or 2 cockbirds that are, I shouldn't say weak, but that quite, they just don't quite have that drive yet to fight for a box, to maintain a box. This way they have no place to perch. Either they land on the floor or they pick a box and they fight to keep it. With that being said, keep good notes. Write down what bird comes in what box. It makes it easy for the birds from previous. As you can see, that's my real cock. That's been his box since day 1. Makes it nice and easy. But a few birds have switched. For instance, this red cock in here, he was in this box all year long. For some reason now he wants to be in that box. So I make good notes of that so that when I do add the hens, it's that much easier when I eventually let them out. That let's say if a cock owns that box, he's not going to try to go back up there and maintain that box if that was his original box to begin with and I just wasn't paying attention. So like I said, for me personally, and it's not something that's a must, I remove all available perch space. I sort of force them to land on or I should say, land in a box and maintain that box as best as possible. And with, again, don't keep 20 cocks when you have 16 boxes available for them, because you're just defeating the purpose. Keep exactly 16 cocks so they know exactly which box is theirs. That grizzle up there, for instance, he's not chosen a box. He's been on that ledge since day one. So he might not be able to breed this year. I might move him over to something else, and the birds that are more aggressive, that have picked their boxes, they'll get the box. And that's pretty much it, guys. That's going to be the next step until I put the birds together. Personally, I wait until I have a long weekend before I make the pairs together. That way I can be out here any given time to watch the birds, make sure the hens aren't getting scalped, things of that nature, and then move on to those steps, because I'd like to keep mine locked up for a majority of 4 or 5 days. And I'll go through that process as I put the pairs together. But this video is going to be nice and short. You should be on the lights. If you're not, get on the lights as soon as possible. Medication should be pretty much over. At this point, you want to introduce the grits and the minerals and everything else to try to reboot that system, as we kind of depleted a lot of those mineral sources because of the medication, because we haven't been giving them that. So get back on that, get the birds back in nice and healthy. Probiotics if you need it. Some electrolyte in the water would be nice once in a while. Just your basic steps to get nice and healthy birds and maintain those birds. And as you can see here, the cocks are starting to drive themselves. That light really brings it out of them. That light will make them choose, or make them want to mate up, and will make them want to. It drives them nuts. I'll give you guys a minute here to watch. I mean, it's just non-stop. I walk by the cage and it's constant cooing, constant driving. So when I add the hens, it's gonna be that much easier. And I'll film that as well, and you guys will see exactly what I mean. But don't forget the steps, guys. Like I said, I'll try to keep you guys a week ahead of when I plan on doing anything. And like I said, for me right now, I'm going to be a week or 2 behind, but I'm still going to follow it based on how I would have normally done it anyway, because this year may be the exception. Next year I'll be doing it just like I've said I was. So that's pretty much it, guys. Make sure they're nice and healthy. Make sure they're finishing up the molt. If they are done with the molt, time to reduce them a little bit. Make sure especially your hens, you don't want to have fat hens. And we'll go from there. I'll see you in the next one, guys.